Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach to women, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. No matter how different your life may appear from others around you, at one point or another, it's likely that you will experience a hurdle that meets nearly every woman alive. As the saying goes, life isn't so much about what happens to you, it's all about how you react. To take that a step further, it's also about how you make your life work in your favor. This week, we're exploring just that with the 6 common hurdles women experience with Coach Darcy Luoma. Darcy takes us on a journey through the barriers that most often get in our way, how we often self-sabotage, and gives us the solution to the hurdles that no longer have to hold us back. This is an eye-opening conversation that leans into vulnerability, relationships, our personal efforts, and how we can create balance in our lives today. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Danielle. It's such an honor to be here with you today. I'm Darcy Luoma. I am a mom. I have 2 teenage daughters. I'm a single mom, and I am a business owner. So I have a coaching and consulting firm, and everything that we do focuses on creating high-performing people and teams. And so we are not about trying to convince somebody they need to be high performing. We are about looking at the people who are motivated to go to the next level and giving them the tools to do that, and looking at how do you overcome and clear the obstacles and those hurdles that get in the way of peak performance.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is something that I know that so many women struggle with. We get in our own ways. We make excuses. We really struggle to show up. So how do we do that? How do we, get to a place where we really begin to march to our own beat and create our own anthem?
Well, first of all, there is the highest performing people all have one thing in common: self-awareness. And so that is, I think, just people, coming and being fans of you already probably have a desire for improvement and have an awareness of what some of those hurdles are. So to me, that's the first thing, is you have to want to know where you get stuck and where those obstacles are, instead of putting your head in the sand and just plowing through and not being willing to look at the blind spots, and not being willing to go to the hard, maybe more vulnerable places.
So many women struggle with vulnerability, belonging, and then really being self-aware, like you said. So, the first question that really starts to guide my mind is, how did you get to this place? And then let's talk a little bit more about those hurdles and how we kind of undo them.
Yeah, perfect. So in a nutshell, I spent about 20 years, longer than that, of my career in politics. So I was working in campaigns, doing national advance on presidential campaigns for governors. I worked 12 years running a U.S. senator's office. And I kept noticing a couple of themes. One is that when I was not handling myself thoughtfully and was not prepared for the different challenges, I did not handle them well. Right. And then I started to also notice that when we had angry constituents calling in, or lobbyists who wanted the senator to change his vote, or we had war protesters come and take over our office, that when they were not handling themselves thoughtfully, they didn't get the results that they wanted. So when I pivoted, my last day in the U.S. Senate, which was my most recent position in politics, was on January 2nd, 2013, when my senator retired. And January 3rd, I launched my full-time Darcy Luoma coaching and consulting.
Wow.
And I used all of that knowledge that I learned really the hard way, and brought that into what I started to notice with my clients, that they also were bringing in challenges into our coaching sessions And at some point, Danielle, I realized it was after a couple of years in. I mean, I've now coached thousands of people. I started to notice that everybody has similar struggles.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I took 5 years and I put up all these flip charts and started categorizing what are the challenges that people are bringing in. And after 5 years, we realized there's really 6 hurdles. And everything that gets in the way of being high performing falls into one of these 6 categories. And that's where we developed then this thoughtfully fit model, which is the basis for everything we do.
It's so true. There are so many common themes throughout life and so many things that we all struggle with. And often people will say, but it's this. And we start drilling down and it's like, nope, this is the baseline. So what are those 6 hurdles? Let's dive into them and let's kind of undo them.
Perfect. So 3 of them are internal, where we get in our own way. And then 3 of them are external, where we have challenges with other people in relationships. And so the first hurdle is there's so much to do, I can't even think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Paralysis.
And yes, clients come in and they're just going from meeting to emails, overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And this is, so all of the hurdles are grounded in a practice that's really aligned with being physically fit, right? So when you're physically fit, every movement's easier, but you have to train to be fit. In the same way, these are all grounded in 6 practices of being thoughtfully fit. So this is a lack of stillness. And clients who come in saying, I don't ever have time to just think, to be still, to be strategic and innovative and creative because I am going.
Right. Mindfulness, huge practice, right? And I think those people that are self-aware understand that mindfulness is something that we do moment to moment, day by day. It's never going to look the same, but it is just attention to what is. It's pretty much what you just described. It's what people who are high performing do understand.
Exactly. And it's counterintuitive. I know for me, I kept thinking if I want to be high performing, I want to get to the next level, get the next promotion, I have to do more. I can't take a break. It's counterintuitive. Just like if you are an athlete, you know your muscles rebuild stronger on the rest days. You would never lift weights 6 days in a row. You'd be injured, and so taking that time to quiet your mind and to build in stillness into your routine is critical. And that is one of the biggest hurdles that gets in the way of being high performing.
Yeah, exactly. I think that we fear if we slow down, everything is going to fall apart.
Right. And for me, I feared that I wouldn't be as effective, and so for me, in order to create more stillness in my life, I actually have to schedule it. I schedule buffers before and after every meeting. I schedule my meditation and my massages because otherwise it wouldn't happen because my default is to just go.
Yeah. I'll be honest. It's mine as well.
Is it?
It absolutely is. I do the exact same thing. I have beautiful little scheduled pieces in my own schedule that says you must slow down now. Here's your time frame. Here's where you're going to do these things. And a lot of people go, no way. You teach this. Yes way. We have defaults in our brains as to how we move forward. So how do you create that stillness and teach others to do so?
Right. So I know for me, I literally have to actually schedule it in my day in an intentional way. If I just hope that it will happen, it does not happen. As a matter of fact, I woke up years ago with adrenal fatigue syndrome at stage 3. It's a very real thing. Mm-hmm. Basically, if you don't slow down, your body finds ways, you get sick. It's like, sorry, Danielle, we're going to force you to slow down.
Amen. It does.
Right? So for me, every other week, I schedule a 90-minute massage. It's a luxury. It is a place that I choose to spend my money because I know that helps me to create stillness. I once a month go floating in the isolation tank. I every morning do a 12-minute mindfulness. That's all I do. I commit to 12 minutes for my meditation. I know others can do much longer and I'm someday hope to, but right now that's my goal is to just do 12 minutes.
I love that. And you know what? We do meditation wrong. As a meditation teacher myself, we are so focused on, we have to do an hour. You guys, if 5 minutes serves you, 5 minutes serves you. What we're trying to do is slow down, calm the brain, get all of our good hormones flooding through our body, create just a moment of relaxation, breath, and neuro recharge. That's all we're trying to do, which is the beautiful things that you were just talking about: floating, meditation, massage, all great stillness pieces.
And I just want to share one more quick tip, because this is one thing I've had to learn, and also that I work with when we're coaching or doing, workshops, seminars with clients, is also being able to set boundaries and to get really good at saying no and prioritizing. That is critical if you want to be able to create more stillness.
Right. And boundaries in self too. That's what you're talking about as well, right? Is like you are going to hold your own promises and show up for yourself just the same way that you would do for your clients or anyone else.
100%. Yeah, I love that, for yourself. And then also boundaries, saying, somebody says, hey, Danielle, you've been on the board for this nonprofit for the last 2 years. Would you be willing to be the fundraising chair? And many of us are just in this autopilot mode where, we just are like, oh my gosh, I'm flattered, I'm honored, and gosh, I feel guilty, I probably should. Instead of being really thoughtful and slowing down to pause and think, does this align with my work-life balance? Does this contribute to my having some stillness in my day? Or is this contribute to that manic treadmill that I can't seem to stop? And then being able to act, and in some cases provide a really compassionate no.
Yes, exactly. Such a hard thing to do. It is a practice. I say that like, I know, I get it. I used to live that life and then, learn to stop, and everyone can learn to stop. Let's move into hurdle number 2.
Yes. Number 2 hurdle is I don't always handle myself the way I'd like. So people come into coaching sessions saying, oh gosh, Darcy, I've got to figure this out. And, I had Sue come in recently and she said, I left the office late. I had to get to a board meeting that night. I had to drop the kids off at soccer. I took one last phone call before I left. So now I'm in rush hour traffic, pull in the garage, trip over the shoes as I'm walking in, and look over and I see my spouse and kids on their phones. Dinner hasn't been started. And she said, I could just feel that negativity spiraling. And I knew I wasn't going to handle myself the way I'd like. And of course, then it just made everything worse. And that's the practice in Thoughtfully Fit of strength. And strength is being able to consciously choose how you're going to show up in any situation. And it takes, it's a heavy lift at times. When you're annoyed and frustrated and triggered, to be able to have the strength to choose and say, I'm going to smile and say, hey, how was your day, everybody? We got to get going, and choose how you're going to show up in that moment.
That is a difficult thing. We were just talking about that with the Instagram platform on Monday, talking about really minding the gap between how you feel and what you're about to do. Such an important thing. There's 10 seconds between the thought and the action that could really break a moment. How do you teach your women and your people that come to you to do that?
So at the core is 3 simple steps. And that's what just like if you're physically fit and you have a strong core, every movement's easier. You're less likely to get injured, and you can use it for whether it's basketball or cross-country skiing, or just putting your own suitcase up on the bin in the, the overhead bin. Same way with Thoughtfully Fit, your core. Step 1, you have to pause. And that's exactly what you're talking about, getting that space between the stimulus and your reaction. So Step 1 is to pause. Step 2 is to think. Ask yourself some thoughtful questions. When I am working with clients, my whole model is like, how do I help others to coach themselves? Right. And so I'm asking thoughtful questions. They come in and they say, oh, I don't know what to do about this. Well, what would be the ideal outcome you want? What's getting in the way of that? How might you attack those obstacles? What's the first step? I'm asking lots of questions. So pause, think, ask yourself some questions. And then with the new awareness that you have, act. Thoughtfully.
You're teaching them to engage in their thought process, really. And it's so easy, really, once you understand what it is. And for those that don't know, really quickly, a thought comes in, we instantly validate or reject it. The emotional body gets involved, and then we take action. Again, there's about a 10-second gap. We've found scientifically, it's 10 seconds. Such a small gap to make the change.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. It's brilliant. And so when something happens and you have that thought, I love how you're describing this. We have thoughts about everything,
Yes.
hundreds and hundreds of thoughts. That pause to think gives you a chance to be able to reflect, is this thought serving me or sabotaging me?
Right.
If your thought is, what an idiot, okay, don't act on that thought. That thought is sabotaging you, and it's going to lead to sabotaging actions, which of course your actions then lead to your results. So think in the moment, okay, how do I want to show up right now? What would it look like if I honored the relationship here instead of just, criticizing and reacting to this person who really frustrated me or triggered me in this moment?
Yeah. I'll add to that too. One question that I often speak to women about is, if this was me on the other receiving end, would I want to receive the words that I would have said?
Yes, beautiful. I love that.
Yeah,
Step into that perspective of the other person.
exactly. Just flip that script in your head. It really does make all the difference. So let's move into hurdle 3. I love these hurdles. I love even relating them back to the physical fitness. I mean, everything we're using is a muscle, brain, heart, all of it, right? So I love that.
Yes, that's just it. And your mind is a muscle, and you can train it, to be able to handle yourself thoughtfully instead of being in this knee-jerk reaction autopilot mode. So third hurdle is, I feel stuck. Stuck in a job that's no longer fulfilling, stuck in a relationship, stuck with a project that can't figure out how to move forward. Clients will come in and some version of, I'm stuck. And so that relates to the thoughtfully fit practice of endurance, which is about being able to overcome those obstacles, to get unstuck, to embrace that growth mindset, to be able to figure out how to move forward and move through that stuckness.
Right. That's a term we use so often as coaches, as therapists. We talk about growth mindset. It is sort of diluted at this point where so many people don't understand that. Would you give us a little bit of an understanding, especially in relationship to these hurdles?
Yeah. And so I like to think about it using the word yet. So if you have a fixed mindset, you might say, I'm not good at math. I'm not a runner. I'm not a public speaker. And that fixed mindset is just like, I'm not good at it. I can't do it. Done.
Right.
Growth mindset is adding the word yet. I'm not good at public speaking yet. I'm not a runner yet, but I could be if I choose to.
Yeah.
And being able then to recognize that failure is a part of the process to learning. Whereas with somebody with a fixed mindset is going to avoid failure at all costs, because that is an indication that you are a failure, as opposed to an indication that you are on the learning stages to get to mastery.
I teach the exact same thing. The power of yet. It's so powerful. You guys use that. I mean, I will even find myself trying to do something and I'll say, oh, I don't have all of the information. And I start trying to research and, pull all the collaborations together. And then I'll stop and go, yet. And I'll write it huge on a piece of paper. Think about how mind-opening that is to just say, not yet, but soon.
Yes.
Huge.
Yes. And imagine if we didn't get stuck. We get stuck because we're doing big things, hard things. We're making an impact in the world. So it's not that you're trying to avoid getting stuck. Getting stuck is a part of our humanity. It's then deciding what to do next and not stalling out or quitting altogether when you get stuck.
Yeah. And the other truth of that is, if it wasn't important, you wouldn't feel stuck.
Yes.
Right. If it didn't matter, it wouldn't be a big thing to you. You wouldn't even think twice about it. It would just be done.
It would dissolve. It would disappear. It wouldn't be stuck. It'd just be off your plate.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
So are
Brilliant.
there ways that you teach yet or really getting out of the stuckness that we can use as tools ourselves?
Coming back to the awareness. So creating that awareness, if you can name it, it's like, oh, and that seems so silly, and then always going back to the core, pause, think, act. So pause in the moment and then think, ask yourself some questions. Okay. Why am I stuck? What's going on? What would the ideal outcome be? What are the steps that I need to take in order to get closer to that outcome and that ideal? And then you have to act. So it's not enough to just think. And that's where I find that a lot of clients get stuck is they might be strong at thinking, but they overthink and then they get the analysis paralysis.
Yes.
So at some point to get unstuck, you have to take a step. You have to then act.
Do you feel that one of the best ways to become unstuck in that thinking is to take a step back and kind of look at it in a different view?
Yes. Yes. And that can give you a different view, a different perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And some people can do that on their own. And if that's hard to do, find a girlfriend, find a friend, find a coach and say, can you help me step back? I feel like I'm just so in the middle of it. I can't even see straight. And that can be a structure that can support you to try on a different perspective if you're having a hard time doing it yourself.
And if you have a hard time or you don't have the girlfriends to pulse or you don't have the finances for the coach, what would you say to someone else? That's always a really great way to come at it from another direction, right? If this wasn't your connection, your moment, your problem, your project, if someone came to you, what would you say?
Yes.
Step out of it, right? Just step out of it. It's so easy. So those are fantastic tools. I think we are now up to hurdle 4.
Hurdle 4, which is the first of the external, where we get challenged with other relationships with other people. So hurdle number 4, I'd be fine if only you were different.
Oh, that went right through my core. Oh gosh. Okay. External blame. All right, let's dig in.
Right. So to your fans who are listening, I challenge you to think about, is there somebody in your life who, if they would change and be different, you could be happier? And first of all, I'm just going to say, I'm sorry for putting them in your mind right now.
Right. Everyone just went, really? I was really into this. And now I have this image of this person that's really pissed me off. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you. We have challenging relationships and people where I don't disagree. If your boss would just smile when they come into the Zoom room or into the office, you'd be happier. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet when someone comes into a coaching conversation saying, okay, Darcy, here's what I want to focus on today. How can I get my neighbor, colleague, boss, somebody else to do something differently? Immediately, I know that we need to pivot, right? Because this is the thoughtfully fit practice of flexibility. And flexibility is being able to stretch to accept others as they are, instead of wasting all of this time and energy trying to change them to be the way we think they should be, which is exhausting.
It is so exhausting. One of the biggest things that I hear is exactly this. And I always remind people that it's really difficult to be really disillusioned with people when you lean in.
Oh,
right?
Say more.
Yeah. Well, when you lean in, right? When you really get close to someone and you really get into the practices in which they're showing up and you begin to understand, it's very difficult to be so disillusioned, so difficult to hate. It's so difficult to really get into a place where you're identifying your unhappiness based on their behavior.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so if we can just go, you know what? I don't have the ability to externally change everyone in my life, but I can lean in and get into a place where I have a little bit of compassion, understanding, like you said, flexibility. I have the ability to build a different relationship with these people.
Right.
Yeah.
Which then leads into the fifth hurdle. So there's flexibility. You stretch to accept somebody. And that, maybe I'll give an example. I have a client who was an introvert and she's married to an extrovert. And so she would come in and say, I want to, I'm so frustrated because we'll go to the party and he wants to stay till the very end and wants to be chit-chatting with everybody. And I'm exhausted and I want to drop off a bottle of wine and, make the rounds and then, head home by 9:00 and be in the bathtub and read a good book. And I try, right. And she's coming in saying, I've tried to tell him and convince him and change him and it's not working. So when you are in flexibility, you just accept that person isn't going to, it's not wrong. It's just, they're not going to suddenly become and embrace being an introvert any more than you're going to embrace being an extrovert. Mm-hmm. Now that brings us then to the fifth hurdle, which is I have relationships that aren't working. Yeah. And so that is relationships that are out of balance. So it's the thoughtfully fit practice of balance, where you're trying to achieve alignment and you're trying to find that win-win. And so in the example with this client, getting to balance, instead of getting into a power struggle or being angry or frustrated that they won't just, change, you then can step into, hey, I'd like to go at 8, drop off a bottle of wine and leave and be home at 9. You want to stay until the last person leaves at 1 a.m. How can we find the win-win? Maybe we take 2 cars.
I was going to say 2 cars.
Whatever I want, right?
2 cars.
Maybe we drive together and I take the car home and you Uber whenever you're ready to go. Maybe I want to leave at 9. You want to leave at 10. At 1, we compromise and we, leave at 10:30. There's all sorts of different options and ways to find the balance. But unfortunately, what often happens is you come in and there's, if we look at the spectrum, the lose-win perspective is, I don't want to say anything. It's not a big deal. I'll just stay till the end. Right. And then you silently stew and eventually resentment builds up. Or you're on the other end of the spectrum of the win-lose, I'm going to get my way. And this party, we're not going to leave. We're going to stay till the very end because it's fun. And these are our friends. And you might win in the short term, but the relationship does not win in the long term.
Right. We have to be content to allow people to be who they are, regardless if that meets our personal needs or not. So we still have to meet our personal needs. How do we get into that place where we don't get into win-win, win-lose, all of the spectrum? What do we do as humans in these relationships?
With balance, I want you to think about 3 C's. So have the courage, because you're trying to balance what do you want and need with what I want and need. Our relationship is out of balance, right? So have the courage to state, here's what I want, here's what I need. And then state that with compassion so the other person can hear it, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want to be down at this end of the spectrum of the bully and this is what I want and I'm going to get it. So how do you deliver that message with compassion so the other person can receive it? And then the third C is curiosity. So what do you want and need? Mm-hmm. And if you can then get all that on the table, then you can identify the best path forward. So I always think about, and oftentimes, some of us are better at one of these C's than others. And so right. You have to think about it, not like if you turn one up, the volume and the other turns down. It's like a DJ mixing board. You can keep the courage high and have curiosity, mm-hmm. right? You can keep the courage high, deliver that direct message and have the compassion be high where you're delivering it with love in a way it can be heard.
Yeah, that does bring me to the point of so many people do not understand what the word compassion means and they struggle with it. And it's very interesting because it seems like a very innate thing for most people. Well, I won't say the word most. I'll say for a lot of people. What does compassion mean to you?
It's about being able to see others' humanity and accept the fact that we are all flawed, mm-hmm. and then lean into the relationship, the love, the empathy. Don't put your judgment aside. Have compassion that people are struggling. Life is hard. And instead of going to that place of anger or frustration or judgment, when you have compassion, you can say, hey, that really hurt, that what you said. And I want to know what's behind it because that's not like you. Right. And so that compassion to me is a place to be able to accept people's humanity and lean into the relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I hear the women that listen to this podcast sending in the question right now that they are saying, okay, I love the idea of being able to use the 3 C's and to really show up to conversation. But my partner or my friend or whoever it is that I'm going to the party with isn't willing to listen. They are not willing to have that conversation. I kind of feel like I'm on the island by myself. What would you say to them?
Yeah. So what I would say is to have a conversation, to design your alliance, not when you are in the frustration of you're not listening to me.
Yeah.
We can't, right? So and especially if you notice there's a pattern. So in the example you're giving, where one of your fans calls in and says, hey, I get it. That sounds great, but my husband doesn't listen. When you're not in the frustration and the anger of that moment, saying to your spouse, hey, and using a soft startup, because how conversations start is how they are going to end. I'm wondering if we can talk. I'm feeling a little bit frustrated. I feel like when I'm sharing something that I need or want in the relationship, I'm not being heard. And I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if you're aware of it. I'm curious, how do you see it? When I share this with you, is this something you're aware of? What does that spark for you so that you can then talk about it when you aren't in the frustration of it?
Yeah. What comes to my mind right now is going back to what we were talking about in one of the previous hurdles of yet, right? It's not time to have that conversation yet. I'm not prepared for that moment yet. Delay, come back to it in a better place.
Yes. And exactly. And underscore what you said, come back to it in a better place. If you don't commit to coming back to it when you're in a better place, it's like, oh, you know what, maybe it wasn't so bad. Things are getting better. I'll talk about it later. And then if you don't ever go to that step 3 and act, things are not going to get better. Right. So you need to, and then it's wash, rinse, repeat. So the core, pause, think, act. After you do, then you can pause again and think, how did that go? Did I get where I wanted with my spouse? Do I feel like that got the reaction that I was looking for? And if not, what do I need to do now or next in order to move the needle a little bit further? And then you can act again.
Yeah. Brilliant. I think we're at 6 now.
Number 6, I react poorly when blindsided.
Oh,
that
boy.
is the final hurdle.
I actually might have my hand up. I'm not going to lie to you, right? When I'm blindsided, I might be like, hold on a second. Let me gather myself before I say something I don't want to say.
Okay, that's impressive that you can actually hit the pause button and gather yourself to think in that moment. Have you always been able to do that, or have you trained yourself?
It is a complete training, you know. After teaching so many women how to do this, it is really something. And I'm guilty. Like, it doesn't happen all the time, right? All of us have that, fight or flight defense mode. We all have that. But yeah, it's definitely a trained, learned skill for sure. How do we do it? I know how I do it, but how do we do it?
Yeah. And that's exactly it. So just like if you know that you react poorly when blindsided, just like if you decided that you want to run a 5K, you aren't going to wake up tomorrow and run 3.1 miles.
Right.
You're going to go buy a pair of running shoes. And tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up and jog 4 blocks and walk home. And the next day, you're going to go 6 blocks and walk home. And then you're going to go 8 blocks and you're going to build up in that training practice until you can do the entire 5K. So in the same way, that awareness is the first step. It's like buying the running shoes, like, oh, okay, I guess I react poorly when blindsided. Wow, I need to do something about that. And then you start to train yourself in the moment to pause. So something happens. So somebody is in a board meeting. I don't know why I'm on board meetings today. That's really weird. Whatever.
It works.
Yeah, you're in a team meeting and somebody criticizes you. And instead of, getting reactive and saying, well, I don't know why you're saying that, and then getting defensive, and then now you've got all the blaming and defensiveness and all this going on. In that moment, training yourself to pause, to take a breath, to think, how do I want to show up right now? What's the best way that I can engage with this person that doesn't add fuel to the fire, and then act. And you can train on the small stuff so that when you get to the point where you're blindsided and it's hard, you have your autopilot accessible to you because you've been running every day. It's like, yep, I can do this 5K. So start on the small things and you build up your endurance and your mental muscle to be able to handle it well on the big stuff when you're blindsided.
Yeah. It brings to mind what happens after when we react really negatively or out of character for us or in a way that we don't want to. And that word and that feeling is shame. It happens so much. Do you want to talk about that? And like, how do we get out of that? And then we'll move forward from there.
Yes. I mean, I am a Brené Brown groupie.
Oh yeah. How could you not be? She's amazing.
Right. I mean, and so anytime I think about shame, I just immediately think about Brené and all the research that she has done on joyfulness and the combination of vulnerability and connection and shame. And, so what you had mentioned earlier, like leaning in and being able to be vulnerable is huge. Right. When it comes to shame. And to me, so it may be, even if you react poorly in the moment, being able to loop back and say, hey, Danielle, I was caught off guard when you called me out in that meeting and I got really defensive and I didn't handle myself very well. And I just wanted to apologize. And that can already right there get you out of the shame spiral by just naming it and being vulnerable and going and having the conversation that needs to be had instead of, you wake up the next morning and just like, oh, I can't believe I did that. And I never know how to, and then, you just sort of spiral and you don't ever move forward in that relationship.
And that takes some awareness, by the way. I love that you mentioned that. And that's back to that awareness, self-awareness. Something big has to shift in that moment. And that is being aware and ready to have that conversation. For those that don't know, the way that the brain works, where shame is centered, it actually shuts off the ability for growth when we are in a shame spiral. The two cannot work together. So if we're going to get in that loop of shame, anxiety, upset, whatever, we've shut off the learning. We've shut off the ability for compassion, empathy, all of our good feeling emotions, and we're just leaning deeper and deeper into that shame. And so that self-awareness, like what you're talking about, building it ahead of time so that we can get out of that and know, you know what, I didn't actually respond the way that I wanted to. And we can turn that shame down, turn back on that cortex where we're able to really lean into what we know works for us.
Oh, such a great way to describe that. And powerful research.
Very, yeah. And we know that that's the truth. We know that's the way the brain works, right? So if we're aware of that, then we can go, you know what, maybe we turned this off and we have to turn this back on and we can kind of lean back into our behaviors that way. Yeah. So we've gone through our 6 hurdles. Where is the one that most people find themselves struggling with or dealing with the longest?
It's so funny because when I go out and do, whether it's a keynote or a corporate workshop or trainings, whatever, I always ask people, what's your biggest struggle? What's the biggest hurdle? And I have to say that it's across the board. These hurdles show up all the time. So I don't know if there's one. If I had to answer and say which, I think there's 2 that come up a lot. One is I'm overwhelmed. There's so much to do, I can't even think. I mean, that one is just, I don't care who the person is. It just feels like that's a struggle and an obstacle. And then the other is flexibility. Like I just want somebody else to be different and sort of getting in that place of why can't they just, and that's then, there's no forward movement there. If you're just in this place of judgment and anger, those are probably but at least maybe 2 of the hardest ones.
Right. And so how do we go from the hurdles, which are definitely self-sabotage behaviors, to really getting into a formula of success? Once we work through these hurdles, we know and we've kind of gathered our toolbox. What's the next step?
Yes, you keep training and practicing. So you go out and do that 5K. It's like, woo, I'm done. Okay. Yes, you accomplish your goal. You're physically fit. but you have to keep training and practicing, right? So you don't ever arrive. So that process of continuing to pause in the moment, to think and act, that happens all the time. Just like you couldn't do 20 sit-ups once a month and have a strong core, right? And say, oh, my abs are, you have to do it regularly, repeatedly, consistently. That's the same thing here, is you need to keep training and keep practicing all of these strategies. The strongest one that I keep going back to, because there's, I love you. There are just so many different things that we can do. I just trying to simplify it. If nothing else, just keep remembering to engage your core. Pause, think, act.
And I loved what you just said. You said, we never fully arrive. Huge, right? We don't. If we do, then we're done, right? Like life is over. There's always something to grow. There's always something to learn. There's always something to improve on. Even the most mindful, balanced, creative, successful person has room for improvement.
Absolutely. And partially because each life stage, we have different goals. We have, where I am now as a single mom of 2 teenagers is very different than I was 25 years ago when I was climbing that ladder and really wanting to set myself up for a strong career. So every life stage, it's like all of a sudden, I didn't care about stillness and boundaries and balance. Like, let me work, let me be productive, let me be successful. Now, oh, you better believe that that's important to me. And it's something I didn't learn in those previous life phases because it wasn't a priority.
What does success look like for you? Like, as you're trying to get your clients and others to listen, to lean in, to do the work, what does success look like?
To me, the greatest success is when I don't care if it's an individual or a team, an organization that reaches their goals. They come in and they say, here's where we want to get to. And the primary focus areas that we're going to be working on and the benchmarks of success. When I'm able to, whether it's a team assessment and retreat or executive coaching or series of workshops and trainings, when my clients reach their goals, like that is the best definition of success ever for me.
Yes, agreed. To watch somebody go from walking to jogging to running, massive.
And to gain their confidence as they're doing that, to me, I always say my goal and the measure of success is I want to coach myself out of a job. So that is I'm not looking to create dependence. I want you to be like, okay, I got this. And I see clients all the time. Well, pre-COVID, I'd run into them at the grocery store, at church, or a different place. And they'd be like, Darcy, they were a former client. And they'd say, Darcy, I was going to call you because I was struggling with something. And then I paused to think, wait, what would Darcy do? She would ask me what the struggle is and what it would look like if I successfully overcame this. And what's the gap? And how might I close the gap? What could I try? Right. And I coached myself through it. That's ultimately for me, like the highest compliment ever is when I have individuals, teams who I've worked with in the past, who then have built up their skills that they can work through those struggles and be high performing on their own.
Amen. I always say, if I can get you to say, I'm proud of myself, job done, right? Job done. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So if someone wanted to really lean into this FIT program, really get into contact with you, how would they do that?
Yeah. So my website is darcyluoma.com, and there's, blogs, and we have Thoughtfully Fit Thursday videos, archives, all sorts of good content, and also talks about the services that we do. And then if somebody is listening going like, okay, I want to continue to increase my self-awareness, we have on thoughtfully.Fit.com a quiz. It's a 2 or 3 minute quiz that you can take that will spit out what is your biggest hurdle. So we talked about all the 6. Which one is your biggest hurdle? And then what's a strategy that you can start to train and use immediately to clear that hurdle?
Excellent. I love that. Did we miss anything that you want to really impart on the women that are listening?
I don't know that we necessarily missed anything and I guess the only other thing I'll say is just if somebody's listening, feeling overwhelmed, like, oh, it's just, I have so far to go, or there's such a big gap, you just start where you are. Mm-hmm. That's all you need to do is start small. Like, don't start with your mother-in-law. Start when you get that email and that just like gets under your skin and you're about to hit that angry reply or reply all. In that moment, just pause, take a breath, and think, how do I want to show up? How can I show compassion and also courage in responding to this frustrating message, right? And create some new awareness and then act. And if you practice it in those small things, the more you practice it, the easier it gets when you have the big things. And I know I've had big, awful things in my life happen where I've used this and it has helped me get through to the other side.
Yes, same here. I agree completely. I always try to remind myself, in 5 minutes, will this matter? In 5 days, will this matter? In 5 weeks? In 5 months? If the answer to any of that is no, it deserves a pause. And you can use that, right? So easy, 5 by 5 by 5 by 5. Super easy to really kind of bring it down a little bit. Walk away. Walk away. It's really easy, guys. Just walk away.
I love it.
Oh, okay. We end with someone's 3 things. So 3 things that work for you, 3 things that you're grateful for, 3 things that you wish all women knew and could use to empower themselves. What would your 3 things be? I know it's amazing, right?
Yes. 1 is to invest in yourself. So wherever you're at in your life, your use of self is the biggest tool you have to get to where you're going next. And so, just like Olympians invest in themselves, in their nutrition and their sleep and their coaches, I think that is the number 1 thing. And invest in yourself, whatever that means for you. I know for me, it took me a long time to get over the shame or guilt, I don't know what the word is, of getting massages regular. And yet that investment pays off tenfold. So that would be the first one. Second one, I would challenge people to access forgiveness, to recognize that people are flawed, they screw up, and lean into forgiveness, which doesn't mean you accept what they did or you like what they did. It just means you are ready to let go of burning in anger and frustration and bitterness so that you can move on and find freedom and joy in your life instead of being in this place of hanging on to bitterness. And number 3, I'm thinking about my own life and the things that have helped me to get to the place where I am and things that I didn't used to do. I would say identify for yourself how you can create that stillness and then do it. Some people are really good at it and you don't need structures. That's fantastic. I have friends like that. If you are not good at, like me, identify what are the routines, the frameworks, the structures, the support system, accountability that gives you that chance to have stillness so that it's just not this rapid, crazy, insane treadmill that you're on and you miss your life as it's going by.
That last line, missing your life as it goes by. We're all guilty. We all have this ability to really move out of awareness and into action. And the hurdles that you talked about are really all of that. So if we can just slow down, slow it all down for just a moment, stop sabotaging, just slow down.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for your time and for your knowledge and for really showing us how we can move into a better place for ourselves.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I loved our conversation and what you're putting out in the world to help all of us learn and grow.
Thank you. What stands out most to me about this conversation is the fact that while our lives on the outside may appear miles apart, in the end, we all experience similar emotions, roadblocks, and the little nuances that can really trip us up and hold us in place. And yet, as Darcy led us through, with just a little effort and thoughtfulness, we can change our story. We have the power to change our lives. If you are interested in taking the Thoughtfully Fit quiz or learning more about Darcy, you can follow her on Instagram at Darcy Luoma or visit her website at darcyluoma.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're looking for daily inspiration, join the growing community at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And visit getyourlifetogethergirl.com for additional videos, blogs, and upcoming events. Also, check out the new mini mindset resets right here on the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. These are easy to use, practical tools to help you elevate and get your life together in no more than 15 minutes. Thank you for listening and being a valuable part of this community. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.